Last class we had discussed about the forces in the corresponding bridges. We shall now continue with the remaining forces that are acting on the bridge. So the next force which we would like to discuss is regarding the longitudinal forces acting on the bridge structure. The loads that are acting longitudinally. Now, as you know, the corresponding forces such as wind force as well as seismic force have components along the longitudinal direction. Longitudinal direction in the sense I would mean that if this is a bridge, this is the corresponding direction of longitudinal. You have transverse direction effects of wind and seismic force, but you will also have along the bridge longitudinally these forces. Now, besides these forces, here when I say longitudinal forces, I shall be discussing three particular types. One is the corresponding tractive forces. The tractive forces are caused due to the acceleration. When you press the corresponding acceleration, what happens is that this will cause motion. You see, it's like an equal and opposite reaction. So as the corresponding tires push the vehicle forward, it will push back the bridge. So this corresponding tractive effort is one longitudinal force. The second is the braking effect, okay, due to the application of brakes. And besides these two, frictional resistance can also be present, okay, because as such bridges usually will be resting on bearings. So due to the changes in temperature and other such forces, okay, there may be frictional force that is being caused at the bearings. So this will also result in a longitudinal force. So I will be talking only regarding these three forces. One is the tractive effort, the braking effect, and the frictional resistance. Now, the horizontal loading due to braking and traction is more important, okay, in the case of railway bridges, okay, than compared to road bridges, okay. Because as such, the difference is that in case of trains, both the acceleration as well as the braking effect, okay, it takes place simultaneously at once. So in case of the roadways, what happens is that there are large number of vehicles, and these vehicles will be moving in different directions. So as such, many of the braking and tractive efforts will be compensated, okay, since their corresponding vehicles are moving in opposite directions as such. But in case of a train, as such, what happens is that the braking and tractive effort is more important, because the entire train as such will be braking or taking tractive effort in one direction, because you have only one train or maximum two trains, okay. Now, the longitudinal horizontal loading in bridges can affect the design of bearings. You see, due to the forces that are acting longitudinally, those forces will be coming directly into the bearings, okay. So as such, the design of bearings must be properly taken care of, considering the longitudinal forces, okay. Especially what happens is that in case of framed bridges, this corresponding longitudinal forces will cause bending moment also, okay. Not all bridges are simply supported. So in case of framed bridges, the corresponding bending moment, we had discussed framed bridges in the first or second lecture. So as such, this corresponding longitudinal forces will cause extra bending moment also, okay. Now, this longitudinal forces can be reduced to a great extent by the use of bearings that are either roller bearings or elastomeric bearings or PTFE bearings, okay, depending upon the design, the forces may be reduced. The forces that get transferred, okay, to the piers may be reduced to a great extent. The forces cannot be reduced, but the forces that get transferred to the piers will be reduced, because as such, the longitudinal forces also affects the design of piers. Now, how the dispersion is taking place and how the distribution is done of the longitudinal forces, that depends upon the coordinate provisions of the IRC as well as the IRS, in Indian Road Congress as well as the Indian Railways. Now, in case of IRS, okay, I'm talking specifically of Indian Railways. See, the longitudinal forces shall be. The question is, where does this force act? Okay, that is the question. Where does this force act? So the line of action, okay, the longitudinal force will be acting in the horizontal direction through the knuckle pin. Okay, the corresponding knuckle pin is the corresponding joint between the two bearing seats. Okay, in case of a rocking arrangement, or we call it the girder seats in case of we have a sliding or an elastomeric bearings. So that is a corresponding line of action of the longitudinal forces. Okay. Now, in case of IRS, Indian Railways, the Indian Railway Code provides tabulated values, okay, for determining the longitudinal forces, both due to traction as well as braking, based upon the different loading conditions, whether it is broad gauge or meter gauge or whatever it is. This corresponding tables are provided, tabulated values are provided in the code. Okay, and as such, any increase, there is no CDA or dynamic augment involved in the case of braking and tractive forces. These tabulated values show the corresponding brake and tractive forces for broad gauge. Okay, similarly, different depending upon the different loading standards, these tables have been provided. So in this table you can see, depending upon the span length, okay, both the tractive effort as well as the braking forces are given in tons. Okay, as you know, the broad gauge, there are two types, ML and BL, BGML and BGBL. So as such, these two values have been provided. Okay, and from the span 1 to span 130 meters, the corresponding values of tractive effort as well as braking force has been given in the code. Not only for broad gauge, but meter gauge and other types of gauges as such. Now when there are more than two tracks on a bridge, okay, as such, the longitudinal forces shall be assumed to be acting simultaneously. Okay, when there are because if the corresponding train, even sometimes they may be in the same direction, sometimes they may be in the opposite direction. So as such, assuming them to be acting in the same direction, okay, the longitudinal forces shall be considered to act simultaneously on all the tracks which are acting on the bridge. So as such, if there are multiple tracks, what we do is that we multiply the corresponding longitudinal force by a factor. Okay, by a factor. Okay, as such, for one or two tracks, the factor is 1 itself. Okay, and as the corresponding number of tracks increases beyond 2, okay, the value of the braking as well as the tractive forces may be reduced. Okay, so this corresponding value 0.9 for 3 tracks and 0.75 in case there are more than 3 tracks on a single bridge. Now, so we had talked regarding two things. One is longitudinal, one is braking and the other is tractive. The third one is the frictional resistance that acts. Now the frictional resistance will, as I told you, due to the temperature changes and other things, the forces, longitudinal forces may be acting on the corresponding bridge. Now this may be either with, there are bridges with bearings and without bearings. So in case of bridges without bearings, okay, the frictional resistance of the RC or PSC, reinforced concrete or pre-stressed slabs, etc., kept on an unyielding pier. Unyielding sense, the pier does not move. Okay, so in case of unyielding piers or abutments without bearings, shall be limited to the frictional coefficient times the reaction due to the dead load. So as such, the forces shall be considered mu times the reaction due to the dead force. So as such, the longitudinal force, I will write here, the longitudinal force will be equal to mu times the corresponding force, reactive force due to the dead load. Okay, Now the value of mu is either 0.5 or 0.6. Now in case of bridges with bearings, okay, the frictional resistance of expansion bearings shall be equal to the total vertical reaction due to the dead load and the live load multiplied by the appropriate values of frictional coefficient. So here the corresponding value will be mu into the corresponding force due to dead load as well as the live load. Okay. Now temperature effects need not be considered in the design of substructures and foundation of piers if a superstructure is free to expand or contract. So as such, when the corresponding superstructure as such moves due to temperature effects, longitudinal forces are created. So in that case, the corresponding longitudinal forces will not be transferred to the design of piers. Okay, since the corresponding superstructure or the bridge deck is able to freely expand or contract. Now the value of coefficient of resistance in case of bridges with bearings, the corresponding values are given. Okay, so for roller bearing it is 0.03, for sliding bearing it is 0.25, etc. Depending upon the corresponding value, the values of this are given. Now the last two one you can ignore it. The last two one is actually for in case of bridges without bearings. The rest are bridges with bearings. Now when you come to the corresponding IRC code, okay, the Road Congress code, Indian Road Congress, okay, there is no separate equations for tractive and braking effect as you have in IRs. Okay, because as you know, the corresponding braking force will be much greater compared to the tractive force. So as such, there is no separate equation, only a single value has been provided in the IRC code. Now in case of a simply supported, okay, in case the corresponding bridge is simply supported or it is a continuous unit, okay, the braking effort, okay, you don't have separately tractive and braking to do, as such braking force is greater. So as such, the braking effect in case of a simply supported span or a continuous unit, okay, continuous simply supported spans as such. Now if the lane is a single lane or a two lane bridge, then 20%, okay, 20% of the first train load plus 10% of the load of the succeeding trains. Now when I say train here, it doesn't mean the actual train, okay. Train of load is actually what we call the multiple axle loads that act on the bridge. So you have one vehicle we have a number of loads, so we call it a train of load. Okay, so 20% of the first train load, okay, plus 10% of the load succeeding trains. Because as such, you may have multiple vehicles on the structure. So 20% of the first plus 10% of the loads succeeding loads. Okay. And one thing you have to remember is that the train loads only in one lane being considered, okay, for the corresponding purpose of the this corresponding clause. Okay, so as such, the train load is acting on only one lane. As such, you see, it is for a single lane or a two lane bridge. So 20% of the first train load plus the corresponding 10% of the remaining train loads, that is acting only on one of the lanes. Okay. Now when the entire first train is not on the full span, the braking force shall be equal to the 20% of the loads actually on the span of the continuous unit of spans. Train of loads that is not fully on the corresponding structure, then the 20% of the corresponding loads that is actually on the span need to be considered as braking effect force. Now in case of bridges having more than two lanes, okay, if the corresponding bridge is having more than two lanes, then the same corresponding value, except that the first two lanes you have the 20% plus 10%, and in the other lanes it will be 5%. Okay, so this for two lanes and the remaining 5% for other lanes. Okay, this is how the corresponding clauses has been provided in the code. So that means that you see, as such, two lanes. Okay, in two lanes there will be maximum number of vehicles that are acting. Okay, if the corresponding bridge consists of two lanes, okay, you have the vehicles moving in two directions most of the time. But as the number of lanes increases, the chances of all the lanes being occupied is less. So that is why this corresponding clause has been given. So 20 plus 10% for the first two lanes and the remaining 5% for the other lanes. Now, where does the corresponding braking force acts? Okay. Now, the braking force shall be assumed to act parallel to the roadway at a height of 1.2 meters. At a height of 1.2 meters above the roadway. This is slightly different from the IRS code. Okay. Now, this corresponding force must be transferred to the bearings, and the change in the vertical reaction of the bearing should be taken into account. So, as such, due to this horizontal forces, the resulting change in the vertical reaction must be taken into account. Now, the effects of braking force on bridge structures without bearings, okay, without bearings, for example, such as arch bridge or rigid frames, shall be calculated as per the appropriate method we use in an indeterminate analysis. So, as such, for a framed building or arch building, it should proper analysis must be carried out to find the corresponding braking force on the structure. Now, we had discussed regarding the braking force. As such, I told you there is no separate tractive and braking force in IRC code. There is only braking force. The next is regarding the friction resistance. Now, as such, the corresponding longitudinal force due to friction is given based on first the support condition. Okay, whether the corresponding support is stiff or a flexible support, the type of the bridge span, whether it is simply supported or continuous, the types of bearings, and the dead load on the live load reactions, and the horizontal forces that act on structure. The corresponding IRC takes into account all these four conditions. Now, I am not going to detailed study regarding the frictional resistance. I just give you a basic idea. Okay, in IRC code, the detailed equations have been given for determining of frictional resistance depending upon these four conditions which I said. Okay, so as such, the clauses in the code have, 5 clauses are available in the code. One, when it is the span is simply supported and the supports are unyielding with no bearings. Okay, then it is simply supported on unyielding supports but with an elastomeric type of bearing. Then simply supported on unyielding supports for fixed and free bearing. Okay, so no bearing is one equation. In case of simply supported and unyielding, no bearing, then elastomeric bearing, and fixed and free bearings. And these are all in case of simply supported. Okay, simply supported. Then for a continuous span, what is the same unyielding support? Continuous span, what is the corresponding frictional resistance? Then simply supported and continuous span in case of flexible supports. So these corresponding clauses has been given in the code A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so I shall just simply go. I'm not going to detailed discussion. I'll just show you the corresponding equations. So in case of a simply supported on unyielding supports with no bearing, as I told you, the corresponding value of frictional force, frictional resistance is FH by 2 or mu into Rg, where FH is the applied horizontal force, Rg is the corresponding reaction at support due to dead load. Okay. Now, in case of simply supported on unyielding supports with elastomeric bearing type, then the corresponding FH by 2 plus VR into ITC, where VR is the shear rating of the corresponding elastomeric bearing and ITC is the movement of deck above the bearing, that is due to other forces than the applied force. Okay, so this corresponding equation AB. Then the next equation in case of simply supported and unyielding supports for both fixed as well as free bearing. So this corresponding equation for fixed bearings and free bearings, the values have been given separately. So I told you FH is the applied horizontal force, RG is the corresponding reaction at the end due to dead load, RQ is the corresponding reaction due to the live load. So these equations have been given in the code. Now ABC, the next is in case of continuous spans on unyielding support. Now this has been also been given for both the fixed as well as free bearing. Now as such you have multiple continuous span. Okay, a continuous span, and that is acting on a single bearing that is attached to the pier. So as such, depending upon whether the bearing is fixed or free bearing, the corresponding value of frictional resistance equations has been given in the code. Okay. Similarly, you have one more equation which I have not given in the this presentation. So as such, you have to remember in mind all the corresponding equations. Okay, four separate cases has been given, as I told you. Okay, sorry, 5 cases, out of which the last case has been given as a clause separately, not as a table, not as a form of an equation. So as such, these 5 clauses have been given separately in the code. I am not going into much detail regarding this. Now, what is the value of friction, coefficient of friction, the mu value that need to be used everywhere? Okay, the mu value. Okay, that has been also been given in the code. Okay, in case of steel roller bearings, we have given mu equals 0.03. For concrete roller bearings, we have 0.05, etc., etc. For sliding bearings, depending upon the type of material, you have all the corresponding mu values has been given in the code. With this, we come to the end of the longitudinal forces. The next force that acts on a bridge is the centrifugal force. The centrifugal force occurs in a bridge due to the if there is a curvature. Okay, if the bridge is curved. Okay, as such we have a centrifugal force acting on the structure. The corresponding centrifugal force value of centrifugal force in case of ton per meter. Okay, the corresponding value of C is given as WV square by 12.95 R. Okay, where W is the live load. Okay, now live load in kilonewton in case of wheel loads, or kilonewton per meter in case of UDL. Okay, sometimes, as I told you, sometimes loads may be provided as axle loads, or maybe what we call a UDL. So as such, depending upon the type of load, whether it is UDL or wheel loads, as such W is given in kilonewton or kilonewton per meter. Then V is the design speed that has been fixed as per the as per the corresponding location of the bridge. Okay, this maximum design speed in kilometer per hour. Then R is the radius of the curvature of the bridge. Okay, what is the curvature in meters as provided. Now this corresponding C value is provided in ton per meter. The same equation will be also be given in terms of kilonewton per meter. Okay, so in WV square by 12 instead of 12.95, it is 127 R. Okay, so 127 R. The same corresponding values have been given. So W is either in kilonewton or kilonewton per meter. V is the velocity in kilometer per hour. R is the corresponding radius in meters, except that this value we will obtain in kilonewton per meter. That is the difference. Okay. Now, in case of Indian Railways, okay, the centrifugal force shall be considered to be acting at a height of 1.83 meters, okay, for broad gauge, and 1.45 meters for meter gauge above the rail level. So as such, the corresponding horizontal force, see, if the corresponding bridge is like this, okay, due to the curvature, due to the vehicles passing, okay, the vehicles will have a force, a centrifugal force that is acting in this direction. So that corresponding force in case of railways, okay, if I take the rail like this, the corresponding force is assumed to be acting at a height of either 1.83 or 1.45 meter, depending upon whether it is a broad gauge or a meter gauge. Okay. Now what happens is that due to eccentricity, what happens is that one of the girders, on one side will have maybe a more value of forces acting on it. Okay, the outer side, the girders that are acting on the outer side will have more forces, whether it may be a plate girder or a beam girder, whatever it is, the corresponding girders will have a more force. So as such, that extra load on that one girder, okay, the extra load on the girders must be calculated for two separate conditions. Okay, first, the live load moving at a maximum speed, and the live load is stationary with half the normal dynamic augment. Okay, so as such, the load is stationary, and what the corresponding value of dynamic augment multiplied by the load, that must be taken into account. Now, in case of IRC, the corresponding centrifugal force shall be acting at a height of 1.2 meters above the carriageway or above the roadway. Okay, and here there is no separate increase for impact. Okay, we don't have any impact force to be multiplied in case of centrifugal forces as per IRC code. Now the next force that comes into picture is the buoyant force. Now forces due to buoyancy should be considered whenever a part or the whole structure is submerged in water, depending upon the most critical combination, okay, irrespective of the type of soil. Now buoyant forces, what happens is that they reduce the self-weight of the structure. So as such, when they reduce the self-weight, a proper checking must be done against the overturning, okay, for for all the combinations of the forces. Now both IRC as well as IRS has provided certain guidelines, general guidelines for determining the buoyancy effect. So first we shall deal with the IRS code here and the substructure part. Now in case of substructure part, the buoyancy effect must be considered for that part of the substructure that are immersed in the water in case of a high level bridge. So as such, in case of perennial rivers are those rivers which flow throughout the year. So in that case, the effect of buoyancy should be considered for the full high flood level. Okay, for the full high flood level. And in case of flow, if it is not perennial, then the corresponding buoyancy effect should be considered with respect to the lowest water table level and the high flood level both, respect to lowest water table and the highest flood level also. Why? Because both lowest water level as well as high flood level is that when we want to find the maximum, okay, when we want to find the maximum foundation pressure, we shall be referring to the lower water level, and for checking the minimum foundation pressure, we shall go into the high flow level. So as such, in case the corresponding buoyancy effect is to be determined for non-perennial rivers, both the low water level as well as the high flood level must be considered. Now, if the foundations are resting on rock, it means that they have proper bondage with the rock. So in that case, we can reduce the buoyancy effect. Okay, so the corresponding minimum 50% reduction should be there. Okay, but depending upon the corresponding type of rock and the type of the bondage between that reduction can be more. Now for design of the superstructure part that is submerged in the water, whether it may be a masonry structure or a concrete structure, you know that there will be a buoyancy effect due to the poor water pressure. Okay, so that corresponding pore pressure must be limited to the 15% of the full buoyancy effect. 15% of the full buoyancy effect. And this full buoyancy effect, if you want to check for the compressive strength, the full buoyancy up to the lowest water level should be considered. And if it is for checking the tensile strength, then the limit should be limited to 15% of the full buoyancy up to the high flood level. So this is in the case of the design of the superstructure. Next, we are going to the corresponding provisions in the IRC code here. Now, IRC code, if in case for the substructure, this corresponding clause is given that for design of abutments, okay, especially in the case of submersible bridges, the effect of buoyancy shall be considered. Okay, assuming that there is no fill behind the abutment. That means that fill has been removed by scour. So we have to analyze the bridge or the abutment in such a way that there will not be any fill behind the abutment. Okay. Now, in case of superstructure, the guidelines provided in the IRC code is that in case the bridges are submersible, okay, the full buoyancy effect on the superstructure shall be taken into consideration if the entire bridge is to be submerged. Okay. Now, in the case of the design of a submerged masonry or concrete structure, as the same provision as per the IRS code is also given here. If you are designing for only the submerged masonry or the concrete structures, then the pore water pressure should be limited to 15% of the full buoyancy. 15% of the full buoyancy. The next force which we shall be looking in the design of bridges is the earth pressure. Now, you see, when the structures as such are created for retaining the earth, then the pressure will be acting. Okay. Now, this corresponding pressure acting on the structure can be either due to backfill. Okay, that may be either dry or submerged, or due to the surcharge. For example, if we have, for example, retaining walls, abutment walls, wing walls, return walls, all these corresponding walls are structures which retain the earth. Okay. Now, here an example of body wall, wing wall, return wall, and retaining wall is given to you. Now, any rational theory, okay, can be used for determining the earth pressure. Now, in case of IRS, the Indian Railways use the corresponding Coulomb's theory. Okay, I think you must have already discussed what is a Coulomb's theory in design of foundations or in geotechnical engineering. So, as such, the active pressure and passive pressure as such has been given here as per the Coulomb's theory. Okay, and what are the values of PA, PP, WH, KA, KP, all these have been given. Okay, KA, KP, as you know, is the coefficient of active and passive. The corresponding equation, if you have studied earlier, has also been given to you. And depending upon these values, what is phi? Phi is the angle of friction. Alpha is the angle in case the corresponding back surface is inclined. You have value of alpha as shown here. Okay. So, as such, depending upon that, these corresponding equations have already been given. Okay, and here you have a delta here. A delta here you can see here. Delta is actually the angle of friction between the wall and the earth. Okay, okay. So, as such, you find the value of Ka and Kp by substituting all these, and then you find the Pa and Pp as per this equation. Okay. So, the point of application, okay, of the active or what you say, maybe the passive earth pressure should be considered at a height of h by 3, okay, which you have already studied. Okay, h by 3 from the bottom. Okay, and the magnitude of the active earth pressure can also be determined by using the Rubens or the Coleman's construction theories, okay, especially in the case of wing walls, okay, because as such the profile that is supported as such is slightly different. Okay, so as such this corresponding theory, the graphical theory of the Coleman's or the Rubens can also be adopted. Now, what is the corresponding angle of friction that is to be adopted? Okay, that depends upon the type of soil which you can take a sample. Okay, so as such, if no proper tests are conducted, you can use approximate values that is given in the table. Better if you go for a test sample in case it is not test sample is not available because due to lack of time as such. So you can use these approximate values for determining the value of phi. Now, sometimes what happens is that if it is not possible to follow the exact theoretical method, then some semi-empirical methods, okay, semi-empirical methods can also be adopted for determining the corresponding pressure as such. And you should remember one thing in mind is that the corresponding height of the retaining earth should not be greater than 6 meters if you are using semi-empirical methods. Depending upon the corresponding value of height as such, okay, graphs have been provided for determining the value of kV. Similarly, you can get the value of kh as such from these corresponding graphs. Now you see in this corresponding figures, you see you have been given A, B, C, D and E. Now these corresponding A, B, C, D, E actually represents the different types of soil. Okay, the different types of soil. So as such, A represents coarse-grained soil without admixture of fine soil particles. It is very permeable, maybe either a clean sand or a gravel. So as such, depending upon the type of soil here, okay, you find, and depending upon the corresponding value of I, the slope angle. Okay, I slope angle is this angle. Okay, depending upon I, depending upon value of phi, you can directly obtain the value of kh from these graphs. We have discussed is in case of soils that have no loads acting on top of them. But sometimes what happens is that sometimes you have the loads that are acting on the soil. So you may have a retaining wall here, for example. Okay, and then you have the corresponding soil here, and on top of this soil there may be a load. There may be dead loads or live loads. The dead load in the sense you may have a structure built here or maybe a road here. So as such, this surcharge, okay, due to either the live load or the dead loads must also be taken into account while the designing of this structure. So the corresponding surcharges that due to that live load, okay, as such it depends upon the gauge, it depends upon the train vehicles. I am talking regarding IRS. So as such, the corresponding value of surcharge has been provided for different types of loadings. Okay, so you have here MGML, modified gauge ML, and as well as NGA class, BG class, all these corresponding values has been given surcharge. And what is the corresponding value of B here? Okay, this corresponding width of these loadings has also been given in the code. Now IRS also gives the corresponding equations or the values of horizontal forces that must be taken into account due to that surcharge coming on top of the soil here. So as such, depending upon the type of wall, whether it is an abutment, return wall or wing wall, these values has been given the code. Detailed discussion is now beyond the scope, but as such, this has also been provided in the code. Okay, and separately, in case the corresponding structures is in an area of earthquake and that extra earth pressure, okay, due to that dynamic effect, we call it the dynamic earth pressure, that has been also been given in the IRS seismic code. Okay, IRS seismic code. This also discussions is beyond our scope. So as such, it is not only static. Okay, due to the earthquake effects, the pressure acted by this retained earth will be slightly greater due to that earthquake effect. So that has been provided in detail in the IRS seismic code. Now, in case we are dealing with IRC, okay, IRC suggests the use of the Coulomb's theory in case for determining of earth pressure in non-cohesive soils. Now, for cohesive soils, the corresponding same theory, Coulomb's theory with the Bell's correction, can be adopted, and sometimes we can also use the Rankine's theory for determining of the earth pressure. Okay. Now, the thing is that the earlier IRC 6 code in the 2014 versions has very limited provisions for determining of the earth pressure. It just tells which theory to be adopted. It doesn't go for a detailed explanation. But the later amendments in 2016, amendment was made to the code IRC 6, and in that corresponding amended version, the detailed formulas. Okay, the detailed formulas has been provided. So as such, I will just go for very brief discussion regarding the detailed formulas. You may not find these formulas in the IRC 6 2014 version, but the 2016 amendment of the same code, okay, that is also provided in the Google Drive. If you go for that, then you can find these formulas that are provided there. Okay, so IRC 6 2016 amendment has provided the corresponding earth pressure for non-seismic non-cohesive soils, for non-seismic cohesive soils, and seismic and non-cohesive soils. Okay, and provisions are also provided for the determining the surcharge live load. Okay, so I'll just go for a very brief discussion. In case of a non-seismic and non-cohesive soil, the value of Ka and Kp, which we had studied earlier in the IRS, the same value in case of a non-seismic non-cohesive soil has been given. Slightly little variations in the terms are there here. Okay, and small modifications is employed. The thing is that the corresponding location of the earth pressure, okay, is at a height of 0.42 instead of 1/3 height. That is 1/3 is 0.333. Instead of 1/3 height, the corresponding load acting as per this corresponding code is 0.42 and not 1/3 or 0.33. Okay, and it is specifically mentioned that no structure shall be designed to withstand a horizontal pressure less than that exerted by a fluid weighing 480 kg per meter square. So in case you are constructing a retaining wall, anyway a pressure equal to that of 480 kg per meter square, it should be designed. Then in case of non-seismic cohesive soil, okay, a small changes has been provided. So in this you can say Ka into gamma z minus 2c into root of Ka, where gamma is actually the density of soil, c is the corresponding soil cohesion factor. Okay, now the value of Ka and Kp are as the same as we had discussed earlier. The thing is that in this case, the corresponding angle of the wall friction should be taken as 2/3 of phi. Okay, 2/3 of phi, the angle of friction. Okay, and the angle of repose as such should be limited to 22.5 degrees. In this corresponding case, the thing is that the corresponding height of the pressure acting is 1/3 itself. Okay, 0.33 in case of a triangular variation of the pressure. That means the soil pressure is actually a triangular variation, and the corresponding half the height in case of a rectangular variation of pressure. Rectangular variation occurs in case of any surcharges that are involved on top of it. Now the surcharge, the actual surcharge due to that live static load, okay, the live static load is given. This is regarding static loads, okay. It is given as delta is equal to K gamma into HEQ, where HEQ is the actual equivalent soil, okay, for a vehicular loading which shall be 1.2 meter. So depending upon the loading type, we shall consider a height of soil. You must have studied this in the design of retaining walls as such. So the same thing is what is given here, okay. Now in case the corresponding structure is beyond 3 meter from the edge of formation bed, in case the corresponding live load is beyond the 3 meter of the edge of formation, so you have here the corresponding retaining wall, okay, it is 3 meter, the live load is acting more than 3 meter, okay. In that case, this corresponding live load need not be considered in the design of the earth retaining structure, okay. Now all designs shall be provided for a thorough drainage. So anywhere, even though you are constructing a retaining wall, you should have provisions for providing drainage. So you will have to construct weep holes, okay, both in both directions, okay, and then by providing proper pipes and proper drainage facilities. Now in case of soils that are submerged, okay, especially if you have a problem with providing drainage, then the corresponding pressure acting shall be made up of two separate parts. One, that is the pressure due to the soil with the reduced weight of buoyancy without the water pressure, and then separate one with the full water pressure. This you must have already studied while dealing with retaining walls. Now in case of the corresponding seismic loads that come into picture, then the corresponding lateral pressure will have two parts, a static part and a dynamic part, okay. So the static part as such, this I am considering for a seismic and non-cohesive soil, okay. The static part is given as half WH square into K0, okay, where K0 is the corresponding coefficient of earth pressure at rest. It may be K or Kp, okay. The corresponding value is given P static, and here you remember the P as such, it is acting at 1/3 of the height and not 0.42. There is a difference here. And then the corresponding dynamic effect is given out separately. So as such, you have the corresponding dynamic effect given by Ca and Cp, and the equation of Ca and Cp has been given here. So I'm not going to much detailed explanations regarding this. Just remember that here you have a term called lambda here, okay, cos lambda. So this lambda is actually tan inverse AH by 1 plus or minus AB, where AH is a corresponding horizontal seismic coefficient and AV is a corresponding vertical seismic coefficient. These are terms which come in the earthquake resistant design, okay, which we shall discuss later. Now this corresponding effect due to that dynamic effects shall be acting at a height of 0.5 meters, not 1/3 of height, but a height of 0.5 meters from the base of the wall, okay. And then there may be effect, you see, this is only due to that earth, okay, in case of a seismic and non-cohesive soil, okay, seismic non-cohesive soil, this is only due to the earth. Now the surcharge, we have discussed the surcharge due to the live load. This will also have a dynamic effect, okay. So that corresponding dynamic effect is given by this equation, whether it is active or passive, QH cos alpha by cos alpha minus beta into Ca, where Ca and Cp have already discussed earlier, okay. Ca value of Ca and Cp is what is provided here, and then you have Q, where Q is the corresponding intensity of pressure per unit area. And remember one thing in mind is that here the corresponding height at which the force acts is 0.66, means 2/3 of the height, okay, from the base of the wall. So there are you should look into the provisions very carefully while dealing with these things, okay. These are available, as I told you, the IRC code as such, 2016 to 2014 version just provides the equation. They just ask you to use the Coulomb's equation, but the 2016 amendment gives you proper equations for finding each of these. Now the next force which we shall be dealing with is the raking force. Now raking force is something that comes in the railways. Okay, you see the bracings that are designed or that are loaded in case of railway spans. Okay, what happens is that they should be able to resist the raking force. Raking force is actually due to that continuous swinging effect of the corresponding coaches. So that corresponding force is known as the raking force. This will come into picture only in the railways. So provisions has been provided in the code for considering these forces in the design. Okay. Now, in case the corresponding span is less than 20 meters, and assuming that there is no wind load, then the lateral bracing should be designed for a combined lateral load due to wind and raking force equal to 8.8 kilonewton per meter. Okay, so as such, the corresponding design other than the dead and live load, okay, an 8.8 kilonewton per meter force should be considered for both the wind as well as the raking force combined together. Okay, now if the span is greater than 20 meter, then the corresponding value is 5.88 kilonewton per meter. Okay, and this corresponding here is in addition. The difference is that this corresponding value is in addition to the wind load and centrifugal loads. Okay, so here it is combined due to wind and raking force, but here the 5.88 is additional compared to the wind and the centrifugal loads. Okay, this is in addition to the other loads that are coming to picture. Okay, that act on these lateral resisting members. The next that comes into picture is the temperature loads. Now, temperature as such can cause two separate effects in bridges, two separate stresses in bridges. One is due to that uniform increase in temperature. Okay, this will cause an axial expansion. Okay, or it may be a contraction, either axial expansion or contraction. Okay, and this will cause us problem only in case of framed or arch bridges. In other bridges, if you have proper bearings as such, or if there are proper construction gaps provided, then this will not be much effect. But in case of an arch bridge or a frame bridge, this will become a problem. And the other case is the differential temperature, the stresses that are caused due to differential temperature. Now, differential temperature is actually the difference in temperature between the top and the bottom of structure, which will result maybe in curvature. Okay, so as such, the temperature can cause these two types of stresses in the bridges. Now, as per the Indian Railway Code, I told you they are not considered temperature effects in case of bridges with expansion bearings. Okay, but in case the corresponding bridge is not able to expand or contract, as in the case of arch bridges or frame bridges, then that allowance should be made, proper allowance should be made for finding the stresses. We know the basic equations by which you can find the corresponding temperature stresses, and the temperature limit that shall be specified by the respective engineering site. Now, the coefficient of thermal expansion that the code has provided. So, for steel and reinforced concrete, the value is 11.7 10⁻⁶ per 1 degree Celsius, and for plain concrete is 10.8 Newton raised to minus 6 per 1 degree Celsius. So, the coefficient of thermal expansion has been provided, but as such detailed equations you can start from the basic equations for the temperature loads, which you must have studied in structural analysis. Now, in case of IRC, okay, in case of IRC, as I told you, there are two types of temperature effects. One is the longitudinal direction that causes the temperature expansion and contraction along the axial direction, and this will also affect the friction at bearings. Okay, even though as such it will affect the bearings in IRS also, in the rails also. Railways has not considered that, but IRC has considered that also into picture. Now, here also as such the temperature as such can depend upon either seasonal variations and the daily variations. We call it the air shade temperature, and depending upon the solar radiation in case. So for finding the all these stresses, the corresponding thermal expansion, the coefficient of thermal expansion as per the code, for whether it is RCC or PSC or street structures, altogether it has been, code has provided a value of 12 × 10⁻⁶ per degree Celsius. Okay, here in the IRS code, each has been provided separately, steel and reinforced concrete one and plain concrete as such. But since we don't have a plain concrete bridges nowadays, so the corresponding value of thermal expansion is much more conservative, 12 × 10⁻⁶ per degree Celsius. Then I shall not discuss regarding the air shade temperature. Okay, you see, while constructing a bridge, you should consider the basic temperature, the basic temperature of that area. Okay, that corresponding, we call it the air shade temperature. That air shade temperature is the corresponding range of temperatures that is normal for a place. So depending upon the location as such, the temperatures, the air temperatures will be provided in the code. I am going to much detailed explanations regarding this. The next is the deformation effects. Now, this corresponding stresses will be caused due to that vertical deflection and maybe to the rigidity of joints. So, we must have studied lack of fit as well as cases in which the corresponding member is of reduced length. This you must have studied in structural analysis. So, the same concept is here, we call it deformation effects. So, this will come only in case of steel bridges. So, all steel bridges shall be designed, manufactured and erected in a manner such that the deformation stresses are reduced to the minimum. Okay. Now, in the absence of calculation, the deformation stresses shall be assumed to be not less than 16% of DL plus LL. In case if you can calculate it properly, okay, it's better. But in case you don't have any value, then a minimum of 16% of the dead load plus live load must be considered as deformation stresses. Now, in pre-stressed concrete also, even though they can have slight deformations, it shall not be taken into account. Okay, they can be ignored. The second is the secondary effects. Now, secondary effects are actually the stresses that are caused maybe due to eccentricity. Okay, the eccentricity of the connections and the floor beams or other loads. As such, there may be anywhere in a structure, there may be eccentric when you construct it. Okay, there may be eccentricity. Okay, so this corresponding eccentricity, either due to the connections or floor beam loads or applied intermediate points, anyway, whatever be the case, maybe there are different types of eccentric loads that will come to picture. So, as such, code has provided two separate provisions for steel as well as reinforced concrete structures. Okay, now in the steel, it is due to eccentricity of connections, floor beam loads, applied intermediate loads, cross girders that are away from the panel joints. Okay, now if you may have sometimes you may have the lateral wind loads, they are acting over say on the end posts to the girders. So these things come under steel structures, and in case of RC structures, the thing is that due to the movement of supports, okay, as such, due to that movement of the support itself, or maybe due to that changes in the geometrical shape, okay, so as such, this may cause rigidity in the connections. So these are the secondary stresses that will come into picture in case of RC. Okay. Now, bridges should be designed in such a way that the secondary stresses are reduced to a minimum. Okay, but they must be allowed in the design, but it should be minimum. Okay. Now, in case of our reinforced concrete members, the shrinkage coefficient, you have something called a shrinkage effect in case of RC, so that will be equal to 2 × 10⁻⁴. Now, we are not going to much into that shrinkage effects and other all things. It's a bit a lengthy discussion, so I'm not going to that part. The next load we shall discuss is regarding erection loads. Now, you see, during construction, okay, okay, anyway structure will be subjected to additional loads. Okay, the additional loads may be either due to raising of these structures, or some additional loads that come into picture while placing of these, while storing of these members as such, etc. So the effects of erection as per the actual loads, okay, depending upon how the construction has been scheduled, that must be taken into account. So I'm not going to detailed aspect regarding the erection effects. So you see, erection effects will be more important in the case you have construction such as an balance cantilever construction, or you have a incremental launching. So in these cases, the construction effects will be the construction loads will be there, especially in case of incremental launching. You have large construction loads that are occurring. So this must be taken into account, okay, while designing of bridges. The next is the seismic forces. I shall not go into much detail regarding seismic forces. Now, seismic forces, as you know, depends upon the location of the site and depending upon the frequency of the structure. Okay, so as such, seismic forces will have both horizontal as well as the vertical components. The horizontal components can be in both directions, in both the transverse direction as well as the longitudinal direction. So, and the thing is that the seismic effects are one of the primary concerns nowadays while designing of a bridge. So proper seismic study should be undertaken for determining of the seismic loads. The Indian Railways has a separate code called the Seismic Code for Earthquake Resistant Design for Railway Bridges. Okay, and we are not discussing much regarding the seismic forces here. IRC, on the other sense, requires specialized investigations. Okay, you see, seismic forces can be a simple seismic force design based on what is provided in the code, or it may be based on a more research oriented level depending upon the wind studies, model studies, etc. So special investigations, proper literature study, etc. need to be constructed in case of bridges that are either more than 150 meter in span, or if the piers are more than 30 meters high, especially in case of zone 4 and zone 5, and especially in case of cable supported bridges, whether it may be cable stayed or suspension bridges. Okay, that should be referred in proper literature, proper modeling, etc. Then in case of arch bridges which are greater than 50 meters, then in case of bridges that are having separate seismic isolators, okay, or seismic dampers, etc. And if there is an innovative structural arrangement that has been provided besides these seismic isolators or dampers, okay, if there is innovative materials or arrangements or techniques that are adopted, in that case also specialized investigations need to be conducted. Okay, I'm not going to much detail regarding that part, but one thing you have to remember in mind is that in case the bridges are very small, okay, so for example small bridges less than 10 meters or say small culverts, then there is no need for taking seismic forces. But in a general case, in zones 2 and 3, between the spans of say 15 years, then you will have to look into seismic design. If these other conditions are there, in case of cable stayed bridges or the spans greater than 150 meters, etc., in these corresponding conditions, you will have to go for a more special investigation for determining of the corresponding earthquake forces. Remember one thing, earthquake forces, as I told you, will have both components, horizontal as well as vertical, and then horizontal too will have both longitudinal as well as transverse directions. Okay, so we are not discussing much regarding this earthquake forces, because as such we have got a separate course regarding earthquake resistant design in the next semester, so we will not be dealing much with respect to that. It's a very vast topic, and IRS has a separate code for that. IRC has a lot of provisions for designing a earthquake code, so I'm not going into much detail regarding that aspect. The next is the snow forces. This is only there in case of bridges that are located in very high altitudes where there is a possibility of snow. So as such, a 500 kg per meter cube load need to be considered in the case of the bridge deck, okay, in addition to the live load. Okay, and the total accumulation. What I have given you is actually the density. Final number preview is actually density. So this corresponding value multiplied by the height, okay, will give you actual snow load. So depending upon the proper combination of live load, whether it shall be designing for wheeled vehicles or whether it's for tracked vehicles, etc. Depending upon that, the height will be different. So 0.25 in case of wheeled, 0.5 in case of tracked vehicles, etc. So this corresponding variation is there in the snow load, in the height of the snow load. Okay, the density is provided multiplied by the corresponding height will give you the load here. Okay. Now sometimes you can see that if the accumulation of snow is greater than 0.5 meter, then the design shall be based on the maximum recorded snow accumulation, okay, based on the actual observations at site. The snow height for the first two cases is just assumed, okay, but in case of the snow height exceeds in case the corresponding snow height is greater than 0.5 meters, then no live load shall be considered. So when you have a 0.5 meter of snow, you cannot possibly allow the corresponding vehicles to pass through. Okay, so as such, so in case the corresponding height is greater than 0.5 meters, then there should be a combination in which there is no live load. Then you have the collision loads. Okay, the collision loads are not going into much detail. You can have collisions due to two effects. You can have collision due to the piers, okay, due to the impacts of these vessels or the ships that travel under the bridge, or there will be vehicle collisions on the supports of the bridges, okay, etc., on the flyovers, etc. So as such, railways does not provide provision of these collision loads, but IRC provides provision for collision loads. A detailed discussion regarding the formulas and the clauses are beyond the scope of this syllabus. So if you want to study more, you can go through the IRC code. Detailed discussions have been provided there. Then you have the creep and the shrinkage effects. Okay, I hope you understand what we mean by creep. Creep is actually the corresponding strain that is caused in the concrete structure due to the sustained loading, okay, over a large period of time. This corresponding thing will have an additional triangular distribution of the strain, which will result in a curvature. Okay. Now, as such, you see the creep effect will increase with time, and this will result in an increase in deflection over time. Okay. Now, in a determinate structure that is constructed at one single instant of time, the effect of creep and shrinkage is not much of a problem. Okay, as the movements in a determinate structure as such are not usually constrained. However, in case of structures which are being considered in multiple stages, okay, then the creep can have an effect on the stresses. So this will affect the structures as such. Okay. Now I'm not going into much detail regarding this, but IRC 112 gives you the formulas for determining of the creep and the shrinkage effects. Okay. So with this, we come into the end of all the corresponding loads here. So once again, I shall tell you what are the loads which are discussed. Everything we have discussed: dead loads, live loads, impact loads. Impact are actually the dynamic impact of the live load. Then the wind loads, water currents, okay. Then longitudinal forces, centrifugal force, buoyancy, earth pressure, the raking, temperature, deformation, secondary effects, erection effects, seismic forces, snow loads, collision loads, wave pressures, and shrinkage effects. So all these must have been discussed in this lecture. So with this, we come to almost half of the unit here, and we have a small part which we shall discuss in the next class. So thank you all.